Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine, if you will, a crop that requires absolutely no arable soil, demands zero synthetic fertilizer, is packed with more complete protein than soybeans, sometimes even more than beef on a dry weight basis, contains essential nutrients we previously thought were biologically impossible to find in the plant kingdom. And here is the absolute kicker. It doubles its entire mass every 16 to 48 hours.
That speed, that efficiency, I mean, that nutrient profile, it sounds like something dreamed up in a futuristic lab.
Right.
But this isn't science fiction. It's certainly not some new, genetically modified supercrop. It is duckweed, often marketed as water lentils.
And here is the profound twist that demanded this deep dive.
Yeah.
The very same organism being studied intensely by NASA, by engineers, as the most resource-efficient food for deep space missions.
A survival tool, basically.
A survival tool for the human race. And it's simultaneously being aggressively targeted with potent herbicides. It's classified right here on Earth as a Tier 1 aquatic nuisance.
It's an unbelievable contradiction, isn't it? We are essentially dedicating significant resources and capital to poisoning what is arguably the fastest, most efficient protein factory known to man.
Why?
All because we have been culturally conditioned, in the West, to look at a pond covered in green and perceive danger or contamination, not free food, not perpetual fertilizer.
Precisely. That is the tension we are here to explore. Our mission today is to dive into the profound paradox of this microscopic aquatic plant. We're going to explore its incredible nutritional value.
Especially the components that genuinely defy the biological rulebook.
Yes. Its role in closing agricultural nutrient loops, the cutting-edge feed research, and critically, why an abundance of a free, high-value commodity often gets aggressively rebranded as an infestation, especially in economic systems that are built on scarcity.
You, our listener, are going to leave this deep dive understanding why this weed is actually a potential game changer for global sustainable food security. It's capable of disrupting massive industries, and maybe, just maybe, you'll start looking at pond scum.
Or what should be called aquatic legumes.
Exactly. You'll start looking at it a little differently. Let's get into the deep end and start with the incredible biology that makes all of this possible.
To truly grasp the immense potential here, we first have to wrap our minds around its biological nature, specifically its speed. We're dealing with two main players in this category: the duckweed family, Lemnaceae, and a related but separate organism, the aquatic fern azolla.
That's the correct starting point. The Lemnaceae family duckweed, water lentils, they're everywhere. They're these tiny free-floating plants, and when they cover a water surface in dense concentrations, they look precisely like someone poured a thin film of clover green paint across the pond.
And there's a spectrum, even within this tiny family, a kind of incredible drive toward biological efficiency.
Absolutely. You have species like Lemna, which are a little bit larger. They often look like miniature lily pads, and they have tiny roots dangling down into the water, which helps them absorb nutrients.
Okay.
But then you have the radical extreme of efficiency, Wolffia globosa.
Wolffia globosa. It's a remarkable name for a remarkable organism, and it holds a world record, right?
It does. Wolffia globosa is globally recognized as the smallest flowering plant on Earth. And what makes its design so profound is its simplicity. It's rootless.
No roots at all.
No discernible stems, no structural scaffolding, no leaves in the way we'd think of them. It is, for all intents and purposes, pure, optimized metabolic tissue.
So if you think about a traditional land crop like corn or wheat, a huge amount of that plant's energy and carbon goes into creating structure we can't eat.
The stalk, the root system.
The husk, the chaff. Wolffia has just bypassed all of that energy waste entirely.
Exactly. It's the ultimate biological optimization. Every single cell is dedicated to one function: rapid photosynthesis and reproduction. And this lack of complexity is the engine behind its world-beating speed. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Duckweed's growth is not just fast, it is mathematically exponential.
And that's the key distinction. Under optimal conditions, so nutrient-rich water, temperatures between, say, 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, it doubles its biomass every 16 to 48 hours.
That speed is unmatched by any terrestrial crop we use for food or feed. We really have to take a moment to illustrate exponential growth, because the human mind, we tend to process things in a straight line. This is anything but.
Okay, let's use the conservative end of that spectrum. Let's say one doubling cycle every 2 days, 48 hours. Start with just 1 gram of duckweed.
By day 4, you have 4 grams. By day 8, 16 grams. By day 15, you have half a kilogram. But after just 1 month, That's roughly 15 doubling cycles. That single gram theoretically balloons to over 32 kilograms of high-protein biomass.
That's astounding. 32,000 times the starting mass in 30 days. If you push that to 2 months, the number would be, what, over 1 million kilograms?
The numbers become astronomical. In reality, of course, you run out of physical space, light, and nutrients very quickly, but the productive potential is just staggering. You're right, no conventional land plant even comes close to that pace.
And that pace of production leads us to our second aquatic powerhouse, azolla. While duckweed is the speed champion for pure biomass, azolla, an aquatic fern that doubles roughly every 3 days, it brings a unique superpower to the table, specifically with nitrogen.
Azolla is known historically as nitrogen's ancient ally, and for good reason. It has evolved to host a specific type of microscopic cyanobacterium, a blue-green algae called Anabaena azolla, inside specialized cavities in its leaves.
So it's a self-contained system.
A completely self-contained, highly specialized system. The Anabaena pulls nitrogen gas, which is totally abundant and inert in the air around us, and converts it into plant-ready ammonia.
Wait, so the plant itself is manufacturing high-grade, bioavailable fertilizer on demand for free, just using the nitrogen from the atmosphere.
Precisely. It is a free perpetual fertilizer engine. And as you pointed out, this isn't some new discovery. The source material shows this was the very backbone of stable Asian agriculture for over 1,000 years.
It's incredible to think about how this tiny fern literally shaped civilizations. It wasn't just a helper. It was the foundation.
It was everything. For centuries, this symbiosis was the foundation of stability in flooded rice fields across vast, densely populated regions like the Yangtze River Valley and the Red River Delta.
Wow.
Ancient agricultural texts like the Qinminyao from the 6th century in China, they described exactly how farmers would meticulously cultivate and scatter the azolla across their paddies. They were effectively creating a living layer of green manure that guaranteed the next season's harvest.
And the output was substantial, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't just supplementing, it was enough.
It was absolutely sufficient. When agronomists finally quantified this in the modern era, they found that azolla can fix up to 1,000 to 1,100 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare annually.
1,000 kilograms.
Think about that. That is significantly more nitrogen output than any standard legume crop like alfalfa or clover, and far exceeds any typical compost system. It meant rice could be grown season after season with no external purchased nitrogen inputs.
So if this self-renewing free system was so effective for 1,000 years, how did it possibly stop being revered as green gold and end up being dismissed as a relic, or worse, a weed?
That shift is one of the most critical points of this paradox. It ties directly to the rise of large-scale industrial chemistry in the 20th century. In 1910, you have the breakthrough by German chemists Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch.
The Haber-Bosch process.
Exactly. They successfully commercialized a process to manufacture synthetic ammonia fertilizer from the air using immense pressure and heat. It's the single greatest human intervention in the global nitrogen cycle. It's responsible for feeding billions, but it also created an industrial dependency.
So nitrogen, which had been free and perpetually cycling via azolla, overnight became a commodity.
It became something you had to purchase, something that required global shipping, storage, specialized equipment. By the 1950s and 60s, synthetic nitrogen was the backbone of the Green Revolution. Governments and agricultural extension agents worldwide actively encouraged farmers to abandon the old-fashioned biological fertilizers like azolla.
So a biological, circular, local system was replaced by an industrial, linear, globally dependent one.
The speed and scale of the factory just outpaced the farmer's pond. And when that purchase commodity system takes hold, the idea of a free, self-renewing alternative becomes not just redundant, but a threat to the supply chain. Which brings us nicely to the contents of this incredible plant.
Moving from the biology of hyperspeed reproduction to what's actually in the plant. This is where duckweed truly earns the label of superpower. It fundamentally challenges some of the most long-held beliefs in nutrition. Let's start with protein.
The protein quantity and, crucially, the quality in duckweed are exceptional. They place it in a league usually reserved for animal products. On a dry matter basis, high-quality duckweed contains crude protein ranging from 30% to 45%.
Okay.
Certain strains, like the commercially developed Wolffia globosa known as Mankai, are claimed to reliably reach 45% protein, or even higher.
45% protein. For a plant that requires no soil and doubles every 2 days? Let's stack that up against our typical feed staples.
The comparison data is really instructive. Duckweed, at 35% to 45%, is significantly higher than field corn, which only contains about 9% protein. It even surpasses conventional soybeans, which are the global standard for high-protein feed. They typically average around 35%.
I recall the sources claiming it even stacks up well against animal protein.
It does. When you compare it gram for gram to animal sources, one major source claims that duckweed contains more protein on a dry wheat basis than beef, which typically settles in the 26% range after moisture is removed.
Wow.
But beyond the sheer quantity, we have to talk about quality, the complete amino acid profile.
So what does that mean practically for diet and feed formulation?
This is the critical factor. Unlike the vast majority of plant proteins, which are often incomplete, meaning they're missing one or more essential amino acids, duckweed contains all 9 essential amino acids.
All 9.
In concentrations that are highly bioavailable. This instantly places it in the category of a complete protein source, comparable in quality to meat, milk, and eggs.
And for livestock, this is huge because it's particularly rich in the traditionally limiting amino acids.
Yes. It is remarkably rich in lysine and methionine. These are the 2 amino acids that are most commonly deficient in standard feed rations based on corn and soybean meal. Farmers often have to buy these synthetically and mix them in, which adds cost and complexity.
So duckweed could be a direct, viable replacement for high-cost protein supplements.
Exactly. It eliminates the need for combining various protein sources just to achieve nutritional sufficiency. This is why it was used extensively in ancient cultures. They didn't have to calculate amino acid profiles, they just knew it was a sustaining food.
But the nutrition story truly becomes a paradigm shift when we discuss a nutrient that science long maintained was impossible to find naturally in plants, vitamin B12.
The B12 revelation is truly groundbreaking. For decades, the dogma was firm. B12, or cobalamin, is naturally produced only by specific bacteria and archaea.
Which means you only find it in soil, water, and animal products.
Correct. And now studies, particularly on the Wolffia globosa strain Mankai, have confirmed the presence of bioactive B12 forms. And they didn't just find trace analogs. Researchers confirmed the presence of methylcobalamin, adenosylcobalamin, and hydroxycobalamin, the active forms the human body needs.
That is massive, but every nutritionist listening is probably thinking, wait, is this just contamination? Did the plant absorb B12 from the water?
That was the exact skepticism researchers had to overcome. They confirmed that the B12 was not simple bacterial contamination on the surface. Standard washing didn't reduce the content. The B12 is now strongly suspected to be produced by endophytic bacteria living symbiotically inside the plant cells themselves.
Endophytic bacteria, so living within the plant tissues. That's an important distinction.
It is. Because the bacteria are protected inside the cells, it implies a stable internal manufacturing system. This discovery fundamentally shatters the narrative that plant-based diets inherently require synthetic B12 supplementation.
And the proof of efficacy is hard to ignore. We have comparative data.
Yes, the efficacy data is highly compelling. A study compared B12 levels in people consuming Mankai duckweed versus those consuming an equivalent amount of B12 from soft cheese.
A traditional dairy source.
Right, and the study found that the increase in active vitamin B12 in the blood from consuming the duckweed was actually higher compared to the changes from the soft cheese.
So a floating aquatic plant raised B12 levels more effectively than a traditional dairy source. That is arguably one of the most significant nutritional findings of the decade.
And that's just the B12 and protein. Duckweed is also a powerhouse of other essential nutrients. It's notably rich in alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA, which is an essential omega-3.
A plant-based source omega-3.
Exactly. The micronutrient density is also impressive. It's high in critical trace minerals like zinc, iron, manganese, and potassium. Some sources note that the vitamin A content, especially beta-carotene, is comparable to, if not higher than, carrots.
This is a complete package.
A truly complete nutritional package. And finally, digestibility is key. It's incredibly digestible because, as we said, it's low in cellulose and other tough fibers. This means the nutrient availability is exceptionally high for humans, pigs, fish. The body can access and utilize almost everything in the plant efficiently.
The combination of hyperspeed growth and exceptional nutrient density leads us directly to its third and maybe most powerful role. Its function as a tool for planetary health.
The circular economy.
Exactly. Nutrient recycling and efficiency.
Duckweed is a natural biological filtration system, a nutrient hyperaccumulator. For modern agriculture, this is its most immediate and powerful application. When nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus are in excess, usually from agricultural runoff or feedlot effluent, they become pollutants.
They cause massive environmental problems, algae blooms, dead zones in coastal waters.
Precisely. And the duckweed intercepts those polluting nutrients. It absorbs the excess N and P from the water, preventing the pollution, and in the process, converts those waste products into usable, high-quality protein.
That is a phenomenal closed-loop system. Waste feeds the food that feeds the animals that create the waste. It's biological self-correction.
It makes it absolutely ideal for integrated systems. Imagine growing duckweed in runoff legumes, situated directly below a pig or dairy operation. The system captures the very nutrients that are the source of environmental pollution, cleans the water, and simultaneously produces zero-cost, high-value feed.
We need to contextualize the magnitude of this cleaning power.
The environmental cost of nutrient runoff is staggering. Billions of dollars in cleanup, loss of aquatic life, massive dead zones, like the one in the Gulf of Mexico. This is why the removal rates documented in studies are so shocking. Research consistently shows removal rates of 90% to 99% for nitrogen and phosphorus.
90 to 99%. That level of efficiency actually rivals expensive engineered wastewater treatment systems.
Systems that require vast amounts of energy and chemical inputs. Here you're using biology to clean water rapidly at zero running cost, and then you harvest the cleanup crew as high-protein feed. It flips the script entirely.
And what's fascinating is how this hyper-efficiency translates into land use. Let's talk about yields.
This is where the conversation shifts from interesting to this needs immediate global adoption. A single acre of continuously harvested duckweed can produce more usable protein per year than 10 acres of traditional soybeans.
A tenfold increase in protein efficiency, using land that is often non-arable.
Exactly. And when you contrast duckweed production with traditional livestock farming, the disparity becomes even more pronounced. 1 hectare of continuously cultivated duckweed can yield between 4,000 to 8,000 kilograms of usable protein annually.
Okay.
Contrast that with, say, cattle ranching, where 1 hectare produces roughly 50 kilograms of beef protein per year.
We are talking about a difference of 80 to 160 times more usable protein per unit of land. It's hard to even process that difference.
That massive efficiency directly ties into climate benefits and carbon sequestration. Due to its incredible rapid growth, duckweed is pulling in atmospheric CO2 and converting it to biomass faster than most terrestrial crops.
And we don't have to guess at its historical climate impact. We have a geological precedent.
Yes, the Eocene azolla event is one of the great geological anecdotes. Millions of years ago, during the Eocene epoch, the planet was much warmer, with very high atmospheric CO2. Vast blooms of azolla colonized large stretches of the freshwater Arctic Ocean. For about 800,000 years, these massive blooms pulled so much carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere that they actually contributed significantly to cooling the entire planet down.
Planetary-scale geoengineering performed by a tiny aquatic fern. It's a powerful reminder that this biological system is capable of stabilizing environments.
So we have established that duckweed is nutritious, it's the fastest growing plant on Earth, and it's a hyper-efficient water cleaning system. The next logical step is integrating it into existing feed infrastructure.
Right. So how does it perform in actual feed trials, and what are the immense industrial hurdles we face when trying to turn this?
Well, this bond biomass into a consistent dry feed pellet. The research coming out of institutions like the University of Illinois and Ghent University is focusing heavily on this. Let's look at the pig nutrition research involving lentina protein concentrate, or LPC.
Okay, LPC.
LPC is a processed, dewatered form of duckweed designed to concentrate the nutrients. This concentrate achieves approximately 68% crude protein, a very high number.
The Illinois study looked closely at how this concentrate affects pig digestion, focusing on energy and phosphorus. Let's break down what they found regarding metabolizable energy.
Certainly. They looked at the apparent total tract digestibility, or ATTD, of gross energy, basically how much energy is absorbed. They found the ATTD was a little lower in LPC compared to typical corn or soybean meal.
Okay.
However, and this is the important part, when they calculated the overall metabolizable energy concentration, it was not statistically different from corn, fish meal, or conventional soybean meal.
So the overall usable caloric delivery is not compromised. That's a positive sign for feed formulation.
Precisely. You aren't sacrificing caloric value when you make the switch.
Now, let's talk about phosphorus digestibility, which is arguably a larger environmental and financial concern.
This is where duckweed offers a huge competitive advantage. The standardized total tract digestibility of phosphorus tended to be greater in LPC than in conventional soybean meal. This is a critical win.
And why is that? Why is the phosphorus in duckweed more digestible?
Researchers attributed this to LPC having a lesser concentration of phytate. Phytate, or phytic acid, is a major anti-nutrient in almost all grains and legumes, especially soybeans. It binds phosphorus, making it unavailable.
Which means it gets excreted in the manure.
And that unabsorbed phosphorus is the primary driver of waterway pollution. So a lower phytate concentration means more phosphorus is absorbed, the farmer saves money on supplements, and significantly less phosphorus ends up polluting the environment. It's a double win.
And what about the amino acids?
The digestibility of most amino acids, including crucial ones like lysine and methionine, was found to be comparable to fish meal. The overall conclusion was strong. The amino acids in LPC were relatively well digested, making it a viable and nutritionally competitive ingredient.
That research provides a strong foundation, and we see success across other species already.
Performance across species has been consistently positive. In poultry, including 10 to 15% duckweed in the ration improves weight gain and egg production. For pigs, as we detailed, it's a successful partial replacement for soybean meal. For cattle, it's used as a dried supplemental protein source.
The performance is sound. The nutrition is superior. The efficiency is staggering. So why isn't duckweed ubiquitous? This brings us squarely to the enormous industrial challenges.
The industrial challenge centers entirely on one thing: high moisture content. Freshly harvested duckweed is 90% water, sometimes even higher, approaching 95%.
90% water, so you're essentially trying to process a viscous slurry.
Exactly. Standard feed raw materials, grains, seeds are dry, maybe 85% to 90% dry matter. Trying to process a soup into a dry, stable pellet requires massive energy for dewatering and specialized equipment that's just not in the current feed infrastructure.
So the immediate challenge is dealing with that enormous percentage of water.
Researchers are focused on three main processing options, and each presents a unique engineering puzzle. The first is ensiling, which is fermentation.
But the research indicates that duckweed silage isn't always good quality.
That's the problem. Research from places like Ghent University indicated it often results in silages of bad quality. Instead of desirable lactic acid fermentation, you get undesirable compounds like butyric acid. Butyric acid has a repulsive smell, think rancid butter, and ruins the palatability of the feed.
Okay, so that's a problem. What's the second option?
Liquid feed, common for swine. It's possible, but the industry needs critical research on mixing efficiency. Duckweed is so viscous, it's hard to ensure the mix remains perfectly homogeneous when delivered through long lines to thousands of animals.
So some pigs get more nutrients than others.
Right. It leads to inconsistent performance.
And the third, most universal option is integrating it into standard compound feed production, making pellets.
This is a major engineering problem. First, you need specialized high shear pumps to handle this viscous product. Second, you have to determine the maximum inclusion percentage because too much moisture will destabilize the whole manufacturing process. And finally, you have to study the effect of the heat from pelletizers on the final product quality.
It sounds like the logistics require essentially a complete retooling of the feed industry's foundational infrastructure. And every time you add energy for drying, you potentially negate the initial zero-cost benefit.
Exactly right. That energy input for drying is the massive, unavoidable trade-off. And even if we solve the engineering problems, we cannot overlook the vital safety checks.
Because it's a hyperaccumulator. If it cleans up pollution by absorbing everything, it can accumulate heavy metals, pathogens, and other toxins, right?
Absolutely. Rigorous safety validation is critical. We must check for heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, and lead against legal limits. And we need rigorous testing for microbiological contaminants and pathogens, especially if it's grown in manure effluent. Safety and monitoring are paramount.
It seems duckweed ticks every scientific and nutritional box required to be a miracle crop. Yet its story remains defined by the cultural and economic systems that profit from its eradication. This is the war on abundance.
This segment explores how powerful cultural conditioning is. Western aesthetic standards dictate that water should be pristine and clear. A surface covered in a green film is automatically viewed as stagnant, dirty, or diseased.
And that contrasts sharply with ancient Asian cultures.
Contrast our aversion with terms like kanam in parts of Southeast Asia, which translates roughly to eggs of the water or water vegetable. They saw food and value. We have been taught culturally to see a threat, and this perception is monetized directly.
The labeling of duckweed as a Tier 1 aquatic nuisance is the key to locking in profit for the herbicide industry.
Absolutely. Homeowners associations, pond management groups, they classify it as a noxious weed, often making its removal mandatory. This definition fuels a massive market. The global aquatic herbicide market is valued at over $650 million annually.
$650 million, all depending on the belief that a high-protein, zero-cost food source should be poisoned.
The manufacturer dependency driven by this system is cynical. Let's trace that perverse cycle.
Okay.
The cycle begins with industrial agriculture, selling the synthetic fertilizers that produce enormous amounts of excess nitrogen and phosphorus runoff. This nutrient-rich runoff enters waterways. Duckweed, being the ultimate hyperaccumulator, grows explosively on these excess nutrients, cleaning the water.
The pond owner then sees the dense bloom, panics, and buys expensive herbicides.
They spend anywhere from $300 to $800 per acre to buy chemicals to kill it. The chemical industry profits. But here's the critical part. The dead duckweed then decomposes, and in doing so, it releases all those absorbed nutrients right back into the water column,
Which immediately triggers another, even more aggressive bloom.
requiring the owner to buy more herbicide. The chemical industry profits at every stage. They sell the fertilizer that causes the pollution, and then they sell the herbicide that kills the plant trying to clean the pollution. It is a meticulously engineered cycle of manufactured dependency.
And the irony is magnified by the space-age validation. We are actively poisoning the same organism that NASA calculates could sustain a crew on a 3-year mission to Mars.
In the cold, rational calculations of space survival, only efficiency matters. There is no herbicide market to protect. On Earth, we have culturally and economically decided that protecting a $650 million chemical market is more important than cultivating the most efficient protein source nature has ever created.
For those of us who want to break out of that cycle, the source material offers practical advice on small-scale cultivation, but the caveat about its invasive potential is non-negotiable.
That's absolutely essential. Containment is the core lesson. Duckweed and azolla earn their reputation as weeds because their ability to escape and overrun natural waterways is devastating. Their exponential growth forms dense mats that block sunlight, strip oxygen, and can cause entire freshwater ecosystems to collapse.
So if you want to grow it responsibly, the simple setup is sufficient.
You don't need industrial infrastructure. Duckweed can be grown easily on farms or homesteads in still, shallow containers, plastic totes, old bathtubs, with water 4 to 12 inches deep. The ideal nutrient source is manure runoff or compost tea.
And the key to maintaining a healthy system is constant, aggressive maintenance.
Yes. You must adhere to the 50% rule of regular harvest. You scoop away roughly half the mat every few days. This prevents the mat from getting too dense, which leads to die-off and foul smells. When you harvest, you collect every scrap and dry it completely before disposal to ensure zero escape.
And for azolla, the approach is slightly different.
Azolla cultivation requires clean water and sunlight, but the trick is activating that anabenous symbiosis. Azolla needs a small source of phosphorus, a scoop of garden soil, a spoonful of compost to kickstart the nitrogen engine.
And once it's thriving, azolla is a versatile soil amendment that essentially prints fertilizer on demand.
Extremely versatile, due to its low carbon to nitrogen ratio, about 10.1. That means when you use azolla as green manure, it breaks down incredibly fast, releasing its nitrogen to plants in less than 48 hours. You can also use it as a compost accelerator, where the rush of nitrogen can spike pile temperatures and speed up the whole process.
It truly offers free, perpetual fertility, undermining the entire commodity fertilizer market, just as duckweed undermines the commodity feed market. So we've seen that duckweed and azolla are biological marvels. Duckweed is a complete protein, a hyper-efficient nutrient recycler, and a proven replacement for things like soybean meal. Azolla provides free nitrogen, yet both exist in this bizarre tension, simultaneously being vetted by NASA for human survival on another planet and being chemically managed as a pest here on Earth.
This raises an important question. When we look at a living system that offers complete nutritional autonomy, that breaks dependency on major industrial inputs, and we see that system being deliberately suppressed by the definition of weed, what else are we culturally calling a nuisance simply because it threatens the established system of profit and engineered scarcity?
It seems the only thing holding back the fastest food on Earth isn't the science. It's our own collective perception and the economic necessity of certain entrenched industries.
Indeed. The knowledge of their power is ancient, the validation from modern science is overwhelming, the persistent resistance to their adoption is purely economic. The plant is ready, The question is whether our agricultural infrastructure is structurally ready to adapt to free abundance.
Given the documented history of azolla being replaced by synthetic fertilizer via the Haber-Bosch process, consider the role of fertilizer pricing, fuel costs, and commodity dependence today. If duckweed and azolla can provide free, perpetual nitrogen and high-quality protein right on the farm, how much of our global food security conversation is framed by what we are forced to buy from global suppliers rather than what nature freely offers perpetually right in our own backyard?